again and welcome to Business Africa Live on BTA. As I mentioned earlier on, today we want to take a look at the shipping industry in Ghana, but with a special focus on the Ghana Shippers Authority. I am privileged to have with me the Chief Executive Officer himself of the Shippers Authority, Dr. Kofi Mbia, with us this morning. Doctor, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
It's a privilege to be with you.
Thank you for having me.
I've always seen you on TV, on newspapers, but it's good to meet you.
It's more of a privilege for me.
Yes, so we want to take a look at the Shippers Authority, its mandate. We have 40 years today, this year.
Yeah.
You know, we want to see how far the Shippers Authority has come. What are some of the challenges that it has gone through and what it is doing to address those challenges, and what the future holds, so that in the next 5 years or 10 years, where should we see our Shippers Authority? And most importantly, our shipping industry, where would we find it in the next 5 or 10 years? Doctor, thank you.
Thank you. I'm very grateful for the opportunity. As you mentioned, the Ghana Shippers Authority will be 40 years this year. Yes. 9 months begets a child. Yeah. So 40 years is indeed quite some time, even though they say life begins at 40. I'm also aware that they say a fool at 40 is a big fool. So I think at 40 years, certainly some water has passed down the bridge. The Ghana Shippers Authority was established in 1974. It was established as a result of an UNCTAD resolution from the United Nations, which felt that by the special nature of shipping, unless developing economies, they set up shippers organizations and empower those shippers organizations with the requisite skill and expertise. Developing economies would not play a good part in the business of shipping, especially when it comes to the commercial aspects of shipping. Because you can talk about two broad areas of shipping. One is the purely public aspects of shipping, dealing with pollution control, dealing with the welfare of seafarers, dealing with maritime safety and security issues. Then the other aspect that deals with the demand or commercial side is where we talk about the ports, we talk about containers, we talk about the movement of cargo. So basically these are the broad distinctions. The Ghana Shippers Authority focuses on the movement of cargo through all modes of transport. So sometimes there is a tendency for people to think that when you talk about shipping, you are talking, as it were, about only the maritime side of things. But today we are talking about the logistics in its entirety.
So not only on a small aspect, but the entire...
The cargo, when it is manufactured, needs to move from a certain point to another point. There may be an interface in the process. And when it leaves that interface, it has to go to somewhere else before it reaches the ultimate consumer. So basically, that entire chain is what we are concerned with. How do you expedite the processes so that if somebody should import something from Germany or from the Far East, how do you expedite the processes so it can reach here in good time? If it's meant as a raw material for manufacturing, you need it here in good time to manufacture, either to export back or for consumption in the home country. And it's a whole process that we are concerned with. So when we talk about shipping and the Ghana Shippers Authority, we are talking in essence about the entire transport chain. So it is not only the port. We have the port and ship interface, but beyond the port, the cargo must move. Yes. It must move to warehouses. It must move to factories. It must move to the markets. So it is important that we get all of this to work well. Shippers organizations were therefore set up to look at the entire logistics chain, to look at what bottleneck impediments are there which hinder the smooth flow of traffic. So trade facilitation is indeed a very important aspect of the business of shippers organizations. That they should ensure that by the nature of their work, they facilitate trade. So you'd realize that under the law that establishes the Ghana Shippers Authority, NRCD 254, the Ghana Shippers Authority Act, it says that the Ghana Shippers Authority should negotiate charges, should negotiate the conditions of shipment, with ship owners, shipping associations, etc. At the same time, it talks about the need to conduct studies. And that is very important for our work, because we need to conduct studies, to have research, to build data. It is upon that data that you can have informed decisions. Other than that, you take decisions that are not based on empirical evidence, on the data that is available to you. So one of the key things we do as well is the generation of data. So over the period, judging from this mandate, what the Ghana Shippers Authority has tried to do is to build bridges, to collaborate with its stakeholders, with the partners, as it were. Our major clientele are importers and exporters. But importers and exporters don't work in isolation.
That's true.
When we have cargo, we have to put it on a ship, or on a train, or on a barge, or on road transport. We have to put it somewhere. So one of our major, stakeholders is the shipping lines. Because remember that 90% of cargo that comes into this country is carried by sea. So based on that, our major partner is the shipping lines. The shipping lines themselves, they also consider us as a major partner, because if they had their ships and there was no cargo, they've lost the lifeblood of the ship. So that symbiotic association between ourselves and the shipping lines is crucial for development.
That's true.
Over the period, we have had to engage with them. And because of the nature of the seas, for example, you realize that when a vessel comes, we cannot just move into the depth of the seas. It has to come to port. So ports also play a critical role in terms of the way in which we put cargo together, send them abroad, or bring them in, receive them, and then get them out into the country. So basically, in terms of mandates, what we have tried to do is, how do we work with all of these stakeholders? We work under the ministerial supervision of the Ministry of Transport. So we are government, 100% government, but we are a parastatal. To a very large extent, we try to exhibit some autonomy and flexibility in the way we work, so that we can use business approaches to solving problems, rather than use draconian measures to solving problems. So we use business approaches. What we have done, therefore, is we work under the Ministry of Transport, which gives us policy guidance and directions. Then we have a board of directors. The board of directors is unique in its nature, because our board of directors is made up of the various associations of importers and exporters.
I see.
So the Chamber of Commerce is represented on the board. The Chamber of Mines is represented on the board. The timber associations, they are represented on the board. The Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority is represented on the board. We also have the Ministry of Trade, the Ministry of Transport. Then we have the Cocoa Marketing Company, because cocoa is one of the major economic drivers for the country, and it goes by way of export. So the Cocoa Marketing Company is also represented. And then we have the Association of Ghana Industries, also represented. So you realize that it is a mix of both public and private sector that is on our board, which is very important for the work that we do. Government itself is an importer, but so is the private sector. So the mix of the public and private is very useful in policy formulation as far as import and export is concerned.
You have quite a very dynamic board then.
A very dynamic board, because they are all players in the industry. As I said, the Ministries of Trade, Transport, they also are doing policy for trade and transport. So it's very, very useful for us. Then under that, we have the management of the Ghana Shippers Authority. We pride ourselves in saying that we have one of the cream, of the expertise in the industry. Not because of the fact that we have something special, but it's because over the period we have focused on the human resource. We believe developing the human resource, because we believe that our most important resource is the human resource. And the nature of the shipping business is specialized. And because it is specialized, it is important that we train our people to get them to understand the business of shipping. And I can say we are one of the areas where a lot of our people are very well trained in the business of shipping.
You pay them well then, to retain them?
It's always a difficulty. It's always a difficulty retaining staff. We manage. What we do is that we look at reward systems that lie not only in the wallet, but in also the soul. Okay. People must feel a sense of belonging. They must love the business they do. They must feel that they are a part of the organization. So quite apart from the satisfaction in the wallet, which is important, we are not on single spine, anyway, but all the same, it's very important. But at the same time, we try to inculcate in the staff the need to have job satisfaction, a satisfaction in the soul that then goes side by side with what will be in the wallet. So we think the two are important.
So if you look at it generally, 40 years this year, would you say that you have achieved or delivered on your mandate?
Well, we are to be judged. I'm saying that we are to be judged. We are not to judge ourselves. But I can only mention, our modest attempt at trying to bring shipping to the forefront, at trying to make people recognize the importance of the entire spectrum of shipping for economic development. It is for them to judge that we have taken the platform now. We've brought shipping on the stage. I mean, hitherto, it is said that because of the way the sea is far from us, out of sight, out of mind. But I think that largely, in the 40 years, we have brought shipping to the forefront. There is no doubt about that. But people should judge us. What we have done as Ghana Shippers Authority is we've tried over the period to bring shippers together.
Okay.
So as I speak, we have shipper committees in all of the 10 regions of Ghana.
Even though they don't have any ports
or
anything?
But they are all doing shipping. They are all doing import and export business. They are all providing ancillary services for shipping. So even though one talks about shipping on international trade, don't forget that the banks are important for international trade.
That's true.
Insurance is important for international trade.
That's true.
So these ancillary services are also there. In all of the 10 regions, we have shipper committees made up of importers and exporters, as well as ancillary shipping service providers. Who meet. They meet on a quarterly basis.
Okay.
They discuss the matters which affect them.
Okay.
We provide secretarial support for them. And then we take on board the problems which they bring.
Okay.
We try to resolve the problems with the key players that are involved. In fact, 2 days' time, we'll be holding a forum, at the Coconut Grove. It's meant to bring together various players who would come to answer questions to importers and exporters. These are questions which importers and exporters has brought to us. Some of which needs to be addressed by the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority, by the Food and Drugs Authority.
Okay.
They need to be addressed by the Ghana Community Network. It needs to be so. So the issues which they bring to us, those that we think should be aired by the various stakeholders, we put it before them.
So you bring the stakeholders and the people together, so that there and then
they can get what is behind a particular policy.
Okay.
And what they should do, So if there are the need to have corrective measures, then we can do that as well.
One of the problems I know that has come up before, and I remember recently when the president was at the port, it came up, was the delays in clearing goods. What is being done about that? Because it seems that it's a major headache to most importers and exporters alike. What is being done in respect to that?
Yes, I would say that, as I said, we have the shipper committees. One of the major problems is what you mentioned, the issue of the clearance process. There are a multiplicity of factors that cause congestion at the port and hence the delays. Okay. Some of it, I would say rightly, are attributable to the importers themselves. Okay. Some of which are also attributable to the logistics framework that we have, the inadequacy of infrastructure. Some of which are also due to the institutions themselves. and which are more attitudinal in terms of the way those institutions perform. So it is not at one end only, some of which, as I said, are blamable. I'll give you an example. Before you clear your goods, you are supposed to send your documentation, etc., to the destination inspection company, who would then do an assessment of your import and then place a value on your import based upon which your duty will be assessed. They will issue you with what we call a final classification valuation report, the FCVR. That will be the basis for which you would clear. If your declaration itself is faulty, which means that you did not send a correct invoice, for example, or you have misdescribed the goods, immediately you will begin to have problems in the system. Because very good, there will be rejection, you need to correct, you need to come back, and therefore you have challenges. So you can imagine. So you can have a situation where, because you misdescribed, a certain value is placed on your cargo. So a certain duty assessment is made. You go to the port to clear. Customs now examines the cargo, because they do physical examination of the cargo. Aside the report that has come, which is the FCVR, because sometimes they need to cite the cargo and realize that you have misdescribed the cargo. You should have paid more duty than has been assessed. You have to go back through the process. Or they will raise the value. Sometimes when you're not satisfied, so these are impediments that come from one side. Sometimes I've talked about institutional bottlenecks. You are clearing explosives, for example. You need a permit from the police. You need a permit from the police. So you go there. There is a small outfit that deals with it within the police structure. The officer concerned is not there. So you cannot get the permit. You go up, go down, go up, down, and the permit is not coming. Sometimes you need some clearance of some sort from GRA Customs. The officer concerned is not there. You go back and forth, back and forth. So you see, the delays are attributable to a number of things. Sometimes the importer himself, who has imported, we have had instances. He traveled to China. He realized that there was this maybe toy or some T-shirts or something selling at 20 pesos. If he calculates, let's say 20 cents. Says, wow, this will make profit in Ghana. Without speaking to anybody, he does container loads of that cargo, arrives here, and then only for him to be told that the duty is so much. And then he questions himself. He says, I used $20,000 to buy these goods. My duty assessment is $40,000.
Why is that?
Why should I? So he goes back and forth. Sometimes he will leave the goods completely. At other times, people come. When the goods have arrived, it's only then that they go around looking for money to go and clear. Each time your cargo is in the container, it means that you have virtually sealed the container of the shipping line. Because the container is not for you. You only used it to carry your cargo. So the shipping line, because he doesn't have the use of that container, will be charging you demurrage for that container.
I see.
So as long as your goods remain in that container, you are paying extra charges. So the issue of clearance is hydra-headed. But it doesn't mean that we've thrown our hands into the air. Efforts are being made in that regard, because what we've tried to do is, like they do in medicine, we've isolated the virus. We know where the problems are. And the various players are working together. Hitherto, we had problems of trucks which leave the port with containers. They take them to off-dock terminals, which are a little outside of the port. Then, to scan those containers, they have to drive back into the port in order to get there, because of where we've located the scanners. No. So these are things which are being addressed. Very soon, we'll have scanners in the off-dock terminals themselves. So you don't need to drive back and forth. You don't need to drive back and forth. Various streamlining measures have been made. We are trying to use as much as possible. You know, GRA Customs has a certain categorization of those who are in a gold class, those who are in a silver class. So when a profile is done of a company, and that company has demonstrated integrity over a period of time, their cargo can be made to move very quickly. And we are trying to ensure that as a shippers authority, we advise importers and exporters to do proper declaration, to use good invoices, genuine invoices. So then they can build a strong level of credibility and integrity, which will put them in a certain category as far as profiling is concerned. Then when your goods reach the port, very quickly you can pass them through the process.
So there are a number of things, at least on your part, you're putting in place to ensure that some of these challenges or difficulties are removed.
And there is an improvement, I can assure you. You know, we were the first to be talking about congestion, etc. But we all can see that there is some improvement, even though we still have quite a distance to cover.
If you look at the fact that some shipping lines sometimes would have to leave our port and go to ports outside Ghana, for example, so that they can offload their goods, what impact is such a thing having on the economy?
It's very serious. Very serious, because when we talk about port congestion, we have two forms of congestion. Congestion, one on the waterfront, and then congestion on the land side of things. Most of the time, we'll be talking about the congestion on the land side of things in terms of the clearance process. But we also sometimes face congestion on the waterfront, which means that you have limited, if you like, let me use parking spaces for the ships. And then you have limited parking spaces. Then it means when a ship comes, it has to be staying at anchorage and cannot come straight to have a berth. So it will delay. If it's delaying unduly, because every single day that the ship is there, the cost to it is about $20,000.
I see.
Just the cost to it. So for just staying in a port, coming to a port, doing things and going back, it will cost us around $20,000 every time. So it means that it is a very huge cost as far as the shipping line is concerned. So if it can come into the port very quickly, offload its cargo, turn around very quickly, then it will be cutting down on cost. It prefers to be steaming in the deep ocean where it's not paying any fees than to stay in port where he'll be paying fees. So basically, that will be a reason why, if there is congestion on the waterfront, ships will want to go to other ports and offload their cargo.
I see, and that means you also lose money.
Then you'll be losing money, and then your shippers also, our clientele, who want their cargo to do business, also suffer. Because sometimes, if you're not careful, they may have to go to other ports to bring their cargo, or transport their cargo by other modes, into the country concerned. Fortunately, the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority has addressed a lot of these issues now. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back.
Here are some vacancies at Elmina in the Central Region. Electrical or electronics and process engineer. The purpose for this position is to oversee all activities in the electrical, electronic engineering department, including the strategic planning and implementation of new engineering practices and technologies for effective and efficient use of electricity and machinery to maximize productivity. Your duties and responsibilities will include the following: liaise with ECG on billing and fault issues to ensure good power intake and efficient power usage, installation of new electrical or electronic equipment and machinery to standard, planning all electrical maintenance schedules, both breakdown and preventive maintenance, to ensure minimal downtime on extruders, thermoformers, reclaimed shape molding machines, and other production equipment. Programming of AC and DC speed drives, programmable logic controls (PLCs), controllers, and other programmable devices on extruders and thermoformers, and liaise with the production department to ensure smooth and efficient operation of machinery, among others. For the qualifications, a candidate must obtain a bachelor's degree in electrical or electronic engineering with a minimum of 10 years working experience. Candidates for the position must have a good educational background and extensive working experience in the polystyrene and/or polypropylene manufacturing industry. Send a curriculum vitae to eric.assign@ggfcghana.com for consideration. Job title: Mechanical Engineering Maintenance Manager. The main responsibility is to ensure that mechanically production equipment is in good working condition, which should be able to turn out good products. These include the following duties: mechanical troubleshooting on production equipment, extruders, thermoformers, shape molding machines, compressors, and other equipment. Planning maintenance schedules on production equipment. Planning and supervising machine repairs and modification. Installation of new equipment, and the design and fabrication and repairs of all product molds, among others. For the qualification and experience, candidates for the position must have at least City and Guilds Part 2 in mechanical engineering or its equivalent educational background with a minimum of 15 years working experience as a mechanical engineer with a reputable manufacturing company. The person must be comfortable maintaining air compressors, cooling chiller, cooling tower, high pressure gas pump, low pressure gas pumps, steam generation, hydraulics and pneumatics, preparing maintenance budgets, and any other mechanical works. Candidates must also be able to manage at least 10 subordinates. Send a CV to eric.assign@ggfcghana.com. eric.assign@ggfcghana.com.
You're welcome back. Doctor, so we're talking about some of the things going on at the ports. And I want to know, for example, what some of your targets were in 2013 and what, some of the achievements within the year of 2013. And then what other things that the Shippers Authority has been doing.
Yes, thank you very much. In 2013, I must start off by saying that 2013 was a difficult year. There is no doubt at all about it. I think all of us know that we were in court for many months, and even though we haven't conducted any study as such, there is no doubt in my mind that for business people, they thrive on confidence.
That's true.
And whenever there is a seeming crisis of confidence, then business people are affected. So obviously it affected us in the course of the year. However, I would say that by the end of the year, we had seen some improvement in terms of the various indicators.
So are you saying that, for example, the number of ships that were coming on, the number of exports had reduced?
Yes, we had some increases, but not to the extent that we projected. Because of the fact that over the period we've been realizing almost around 16 to 17% increase in cargo throughput passing the ports of Tema and Takoradi. In 2013, however, we realized that dropped to about 9%. So consequently, it dropped at the back of, say, transit traffic, which reduced drastically, and also the fact that there was congestion at the ports over the period. So that also affected the trade generally. But I would say that for Ghana Shippers Authority, we set ourselves a number of targets, to make sure that we hold all of our shipper committees, bring education to importers and exporters across the 10 regions of Ghana. That was carried out. We also started we had started already our Shippers House for Accra, which also went on very successfully over the period. We started also the Takoradi Logistics Platform for the oil and gas industry. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Yeah. That also, we started the project and it's to be completed this year. Our various education programs for shippers were well done. We also had the annual judges seminar. You know, we do a seminar for the judges, as I said, because of the specialized nature of shipping industry. Yes, we organize a maritime seminar for the judges in maritime law. So we bring experts from outside to come and dilate on issues in maritime law to build capacity for the judiciary. At the same time, in 2013, I think it's important for me to mention that we also hold seminars for the media. The media is one of our major stakeholders as people who educate, you know, because one of the key things for the media is also to educate, to inform. And therefore, they are a medium. So if we can carry our message across appropriately, the media themselves should appreciate. And over the last 5 years, we've been having every year a seminar for media personnel to bring them in tune with matters that affect importers and exporters and things that are happening in the shipping industry. So we do that. In the year 2013 also, we published all the 4 quarters of our shipping review. You know, it's a quarterly digest that provides information on shipping. You know, we've become the source for maritime statistics, as it were, you know, various forms where cargo is coming from. We do route analysis, for example, so we can tell that now a lot of our cargo is coming from Far East and the rest, whereas earlier on, a lot of our imports were coming from Europe, you know. So we do that statistics as well. It's one of the things we do. We also solve the problems of shippers on a daily basis and provide information to them. Our offices in Tema, in Takoradi, in Kumasi, in Accra are constantly working in that direction. Remember that last year also we completed the setting up of our main shipper complaint and support units. These are ready sources for providing shipping advice and support to importers and exporters. So we have them located in Aflao, in Abu, in Takoradi, and then at the Kotoka International Airport. We have set up our new one. Our target was to have finished one in Paga. It's completed. It will be commissioned this year.
Why Paga?
Paga because Paga is an important route for the cargoes that are leaving Ghana and going to Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. And it's traders, importers and exporters who are involved in international trade, who go through the border, and they face numerous problems sometimes when they are going through the border. They require us to give them leaflets. Sometimes we have to bring them to our office there, a very small office, advise them on what to do. And when they are having challenges with, say, immigration, with customs, etc., we intervene and then try and act on their behalf. So that is why we have the shipper complaints and support units to provide real-time information and advice to shippers. Yes.
You mentioned something that caught my attention about the shipper's house.
Yes.
You know, what is its significance in terms of the work you do?
Ghana should be looking ahead. You know, Ghana should be looking ahead. Today, for example, when we talk about arbitration, anybody doing maritime law will tell you that we all know where the arbitration centers are. You know, in New York, in Hong Kong, in London. You know. These are so most of the time if you have to go outside, you know, because they've built the expertise over time. We want to also start building something for Africa, you know. So we are looking at that maritime, the shipper's house, and we are saying to ourselves that within this house we want to have, for example, an arbitration center. You know, that arbitration center will deal in arbitrating international commercial disputes, including maritime disputes. You know, so that's one of the things that the shipper's house will house. You know, then we also want to have a knowledge and resource center where we have both an electronic and then also a manual or print library. You know, so we should be the hub in that respect, that when you want information, you should say, if you come there, you know that you get that information. We want to build a freight exchange in that house. So we can have something similar to the stock exchange, but in maritime sense, it enables you to place charters, you know, to fix rates, to know where boxes are moving, etc. What are the charter rates for a vessel today? If I want to charter in a vessel and then bring this, how much is it going to cost me, you know? So that kind of exchange will allow that to be possible. So the house is not just a house in name, but also to house things that are related to international trade and transport and take the dynamics of the trade to the next level.
I see. Well, one important aspect of our economy for the past maybe 3 years has been the oil, discovery of oil. What has been its impacts on your operations, but more so, what input are you making in that direction?
Yes, the oil and gas industry, I would say to some extent, took Ghana by storm. You know, oil was found in commercial quantities, but we were ill prepared, you know, to deal with all of the facets of the development of an oil and gas industry. I mentioned that what we have presently is more of an oil and gas firm. We need a lot of those firms, as it were, to create an industry. You know, so we have started off, but when we started off, it was quite clear that we were not too prepared, not ready for all of the things. What it did for us as importers and exporters, so is that it brought in a lot of cargo. So our cargo volumes obviously shot up. It was clear that if you take the port of Takoradi, you know, once you got the FPSO in, then there was the need for you to have supply vessels, which would take material from the land to the oil rigs. You know, all of a sudden it overtook the port of Takoradi, because from supply vessel rate which we are having of around maybe 5 or 6, it went straight to 100. You know, supply vessels.
That's a serious constraint on it.
So it means that the facilities which you have, you are sharing it now with a new product that has come in, which is the oil and gas.
Than what you're
already doing. You know, you had constraints already. Even before the new product came, you had constraints. So the port had to very quickly, you know, re-engineer itself and then get things done to accommodate this new baby. You know, and that has been done. For us as Ghana Shippers Authority, we're looking more at the logistic ends of things, so that we could have an opportunity for having local content. You know, so our importers and exporters, they could either import or fabricate or bring things that will be needed on the rigs. You know, the rig is like a mini city. You know,
that big.
Not as big as a city, but what I mean is the
they
things that
require.
happen. Yes,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
People are on the rig, they are eating, they are bathing, they are having entertainment. Everything that is happening is also happening on the rig.
Yeah.
So, in effect, there is consumption on the rig. There is replacement of things on the rig.
Yeah.
People are providing food, people are providing materials, victuals, etc. to the rig. At the same time, the equipment on the rig, from time to time, you know, the oil and gas industry is a very delicate industry, because of the fact that you are taking oil and gas from the depths of the ocean at very high pressures. And consequently, anything that happens can give you a blowout. And when there is a blowout, you can get oil spilling. And, you know, we all saw what happened in America, you know, yeah. So you are sure the Deepwater Horizon, you know, so it's very clear to you that if there is a catastrophe, it can be of monumental proportions. And it is therefore important that measures are taken for safety. So valves and things which are used on the rigs, when they make their time, if it's, for example, to make maybe 500 revolutions, once it makes the 500 revolutions, it ought to be brought out. It ought to be refurbished. Okay. You know, you have to do all of the things you need to do with it, and then have it go back to the rig. So what we are doing is to create a logistics platform that would allow repair works to be made for rig material.
And that is coming from the shippers?
From the shipper side, yes. From the shipper side. So the supplies that are needed, I refer to it as end-to-end logistics. You know, the supplies which are needed on the rigs. You have a warehouse that will stock the things which are needed, and then they can be supplied to the rigs. We are now only having the FPSO, but very soon we are going to have other rigs as well. And all of these Sankofa, Chinibwa, etc., they are all coming up. And consequently, you would need to supply all of these, you know, with various materials. Remember that the industry is also has a heavy dose of piping. If you take the gas, for example, that Twabu project, so you bring lots and lots of pipes. These pipes must be kept somewhere. So we are creating the logistics platform to ensure that these pipes are brought on board.
Seems to be doing a lot in terms of the oil, industry.
The oil is big business, but we can only take advantage of the oil and gas industry once we begin to look more at the midstream, downstream areas. Because as far as upstream is concerned, they will generate the oil, it will go into tankers which would come, take the oil and off. But once we can create other ancillary services, then Ghanaians can benefit from the oil and gas. We have to look. We are doing that as far as the logistics platform is concerned.
One of the things that BTA, or the Business Television Africa, is interested in is trade among African countries. So I want to know, what kind of relationship do you have, for example, with other shipping authorities, either in West Africa or the continent itself, to be able to improve and increase trade among ourselves?
Thank you very much. Ghana Shippers Authority, we have entered into memoranda of understanding with Burkina Faso, with Mali and Niger, from the basis that they are landlocked economies, and consequently we deal with them at close quarters to ensure that there will be free movement of trade. We also work closely with UMOA and ECOWAS. We also work with the Borderless Alliance. One of the key things that our strategic partnership with the Borderless Alliance does is to ensure that we remove bottlenecks to allow for intra-West African trade. That is what the key thing. So what are the various bottlenecks? Working with the USAID, what we do is we check out for the various bottlenecks, try to reduce or remove the bottlenecks, and ensure that there is more trade. One of the key inhibiting factors has been the infrastructure. The infrastructure itself is not up to speed. Then you also look at currency. Then you also look at language. These are barriers that we have found. And consequently, every effort is being made. We are in discussions with EcoBank. EcoBank has started, ensuring that they create a platform such that people who are importing in West Africa can use the banking system. And consequently, they don't have to carry huge sums of money on themselves to go and do business. And gradually, I'm sure, when it gains grounds, we will all see the benefits of it. So intra-Africa trade is very little. Among ourselves, we are trading almost up to about just 3% of world trade, which is indeed very, very low, And if we are to up, African trade, there is a need for us to get our structures and systems working well. The systems should be well lubricated. If I tell you the challenges that you face in road transport, the number of barriers that you come across in order to enter into Burkina Faso, I talk about the harassment that drivers face, some of the roadblocks are very intermittent. District assemblies and things all set up roadblocks, and they all collect money. Without warning. So these are challenges which we face. As I said, the most important thing is first to know the challenges, and then you take steps to address them.
I see. Let me take you maybe a bit off track, but this issue of dollars, in our operations. I know that the shipping or the ports still charge some of these things in dollars. Why do we have the Bank of Ghana saying nobody should transact business in dollars, but we have the shipping we have the ports charging some aspects in dollars? And is it a case where probably the Bank of Ghana should have done a bit more consultations with people like the authority, the Shippers Authority, before coming up with some of these directions?
Well, maybe a little more consultation, fine. I believe they might have done some consultation, but if you judge from, for example, where I sit, from the complaints that we received from importers and exporters, then it is quite clear that there was not sufficient clarity on the subject. What we have done subsequent to that is to invite the Bank of Ghana, and they have come and they've shed light on some of the measures which they put in place. The measures which the Bank of Ghana put in place do not have blanket application, I should say. What is important is if you take certain aspects of the business, they cannot be done in local currency. because the nature of the business is itself offshore. You know, and consequently, with that kind of business, the payment would have to be in offshore currencies. Let me take freight, for example. One of the basic things in international transportation, especially sea transportation, is freight. Freight of the ship owner is his lifeblood. It's that which enables him undertake the voyage. And therefore, normally freight is prepaid. You pay the freight before your cargo is loaded. Freight is prepaid. Today, the dynamics of shipping has changed. Containerization has had a very significant impact on shipping, such that shipping lines are picking containers from various places and loading them. So they are picking them from the hinterlands and loading them. Consequently, you can have an arrangement with the shipping line where he says, instead of prepaid freight, you pay freight at destination. So when he says you should pay the freight at destination, you cannot come and pay him cedis at destination, because that freight he would have collected in foreign currency before coming to you. So as I said, the Bank of Ghana directives don't have a blanket application, and they themselves have explained that when it comes to issues of freight, then those ones, they can be separated as an offshore activity, an export activity, and consequently can be collected in dollars. The same applies to the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. You know, the things that they do which are on the waterfront, you know, those things are regarded as offshore and consequently payable in dollars. You know, every port they go to is the same. Ghana is not different. And when you come to the shore handling, once the goods have arrived and you are moving them by trucks, etc., all of those payments are denominated in cedis. They are cedi payments. You know.
I think we'll take one final break, then we'll come back to wrap up on our discussion.
Here are some vacancies at Elmina in the Central Region. Electrical or electronics and process engineer. The purpose for this position is to oversee all activities in the electrical, electronic engineering department, including the strategic planning and implementation of new engineering practices and technologies for effective and efficient use of electricity and machinery to maximize productivity. Your duties and responsibilities will include the following: liaise with ECG on billing and fault issues to ensure good power intake and efficient power usage. Installation of new electrical or electronic equipment and machinery to standard. Planning all electrical maintenance schedules, both breakdown and preventive maintenance, to ensure minimal downtime on extruders, thermoformers, reclaimed shape molding machines, and other production equipment. Programming of AC and DC speed drives, programmable logic controls (PLCs), controllers, and other programmable devices on extruders and thermoformers, and liaise with the production department to ensure smooth and efficient operation of machinery, among others. For the qualifications, a candidate must obtain a bachelor's degree in electrical or electronic engineering with a minimum of 10 years working experience. Candidates for the position must have a good educational background and extensive working experience in the polystyrene and/or polypropylene manufacturing industry. Send a curriculum vitae to eric.assign@ggfcghana.com for consideration. Job title: Mechanical Engineering Maintenance Manager. The main responsibility is to ensure that mechanically production equipment is in good working condition, which should be able to turn out good products. These include the following duties: mechanical troubleshooting on production equipment, extruders, thermoformers, shape molding machines, compressors, and other equipment. Planning maintenance schedules on production equipment. Planning and supervising machine repairs and modification. Installation of new equipment, and the design and fabrication and repairs of all product molds, among others. For the qualification and experience, candidates for the position must have at least City and Guilds Part 2 in mechanical engineering or its equivalent educational background with a minimum of 15 years working experience as a mechanical engineer with a reputable manufacturing company. The person must be comfortable maintaining air compressors, cooling chiller, cooling tower, high-pressure gas pump, low-pressure gas pumps, steam generation, hydraulics and pneumatics, preparing maintenance budgets, and any other mechanical works. Candidates must also be able to manage at least 10 subordinates. Send a CV to eric.assign@ggfcghana.com. eric.assign@ggfcghana.com.
The tourism industry in Ghana is reported to be the 4th highest foreign exchange earner on our GDP list. We will find out what the impact, the identification, development and promotion of tourist sites in the local vicinities where they are located. We also want to talk to the various chiefs and opinion leaders in these communities to assess whether tourism is making a positive or negative impact on the lives of the local people. This is Tourism TV, fact-finding program that seeks to investigate the existing and potential tourist sites. Join me, Ralph Aike, this and every Friday on this wonderful expedition to find out what tourism is all about in Ghana.
Welcome back, viewers. Doctor, we've spoken quite at length about some of the things the authority is doing. Now, what are some of the challenges that, as an authority, you are facing, and what are you doing to address those challenges?
Yes, the challenges are manifold. There are those that I can categorize and say they are institutional bottlenecks, which we are working on with all our stakeholders. I've told you about something that is coming up on the 25th, etc. So those are challenges with respect to the various institutions and how their people are working. Some of them have to do with attitude. And those that deal with attitude, it's a Ghana problem. Ghana Shippers Authority can't solve it. It's a Ghana problem. We need to look at our attitudes. From our side, we are trying to educate shippers in trying to realize that when government takes duty, it is for the good of all. And therefore, that tendency to beat the system, we should move away from it and then focus more on providing genuine invoices, proper declarations. Because look, no matter how well the Ghana Shippers Authority performs, if people don't change their attitude, and then they have this attitude of we'll beat the system, we would not get to where we want to get to. If you ask me, how am I seeing the future? I'm looking at a future in which you sit in the comfort of your office. You don't have to go to the port. When you visit the port, the only people you see are truck drivers or others who are in an enclosed area monitoring whatever is happening in the port. Because you sit in the comfort of your office, or you get information that your cargo has arrived. You have started your processes even before the cargo arrives. In fact, the Ghana Shippers Authority, by virtue of our legislative instrument, LI 2190, we are now coming up with advanced shipment information, which will allow us to get data before your ship arrives. So you should have done all your processing before the ship arrives. That information you key in, you send over there. A truck, a container, they bring your container to your warehouse. They bring it to your premises. They bring it to wherever you want it to be sent to. So your payment, everything is done online. That is where we should be getting. But we can only get there when there is integrity. When customs can rely on the information which you have provided them. Right now, we are pressing customs. We said, look, under the Gateway Project, we were supposed to reduce intrusive inspection to about 20%. But as I speak, we are doing almost 100% intrusive inspection because the information available to customs is that people want to beat the system. So we get to the destination inspection companies, we try and find out from them, and then they say, look, up to about 70% of the invoices which are coming, of the declarations, they are fake. So no matter how I try to hit on customs to allow cargo to flow, if the information they have is that people are not providing genuine invoices, if they are showing that the declarations are wrong, then you are sure they would insist that they want to do intrusive inspection.
But Doc, is it not possible to liaise then with the ports where it originated from, for example? Because my understanding would be that, for example, if it's coming from Cote d'Ivoire, they would have done the inspection, or let's say their authority or whoever is in charge would have done that. Can't we liaise with the destination where it's coming from so that we can do that?
Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that these days. You know, earlier on, Ghana was a pre-inspection country. So it means that goods which were bound for this country, there was pre-inspection of those goods
at the original point.
At the original point before they came in. We had serious challenges with pre-inspection, and consequently we moved towards destination inspection. So right now we are using destination inspection. I can tell you that today the nature of the business is that because we are using containers a lot, people are loading containers in different places. In order to expedite the business of shipping, the shipping line, they bring a container to him. That container is sealed. You get me? He has no way of knowing what is in it. So he will describe the container as said to contain paper reels. That is what it is said to contain. So he would carry it and then bring it in. The nature of the business now is such that your declaration which you make must be appropriate. We have non-intrusive inspection like scanning, but scanning is not 100% proof. Scanning cannot sometimes differentiate, items for you to know their values. If you have packed some material, in a container, there may be silk, there may be cotton, there may be chiffon, something. Each of these has a different code and is categorized differently, and therefore has a different value in terms of duty.
Yeah.
If you were to bring television sets, a Sony television costs more than Crown or President.
That's true.
So, in the scanner, it may show all of them as televisions, but it cannot tell which is Crown and then which is. So obviously, it won't satisfy all of it. But as I said, if our attitudes change, and then we do proper declaration, and then in addition to that, customs or GRA customs must also be using the audit trail a lot more, so that the things which you have captured, you can allow the containers to go. You do your examination of the photographs which you have taken, the scanned material, what you have. You do thorough examination, and if you should find discrepancies, then you can go and deal very well with those ones concerned. It's very important that we look at all of these areas.
2014, what are some of your targets?
2014, one of our targets, our plan is to ensure that we complete our shippers house. We want to complete the shippers house. We want to put in place the appropriate mechanisms and structures for setting up the freight exchange, for setting up the maritime arbitration center, for setting up our maritime knowledge and resource center. These are what we want to do 2014. 2014, we want also to complete our Takoradi logistics platform. we also plan to get investors to expand that logistic platform. By the end of 2014, we want to have an investor on board. We have already acquired 30 acres of land. We are just developing 2 acres of that land in Takoradi. Okay. We want an investor to partner us to develop the additional 30 acres. Okay. You know, in 2014, we want to commission our PAGA office, which I told you, and try to create awareness for that PAGA office. Okay. We want to carry out our routine programs of education of journalists, you know, hold our judges seminar for the year, hold all our meetings with the SHIPA committees in all of the 10 regions of Ghana, assess the performance of the SHIPA complaint and support units. In 2014, what we set ourselves to do is to publicize negotiated rates. We have started already. By the first quarter, we started putting forth negotiated rates. So shippers are aware and they are using it. That's the good news. Okay. The good news is shippers are taking that document and saying to people that Shippers Authority says, this is what you should charge me. This is what you should charge me. We just have the ship owners to negotiate with, and then we would have completed the whole thing. You know, so in 2014, we expect to execute the mandate that is given us under LI 2190. Part of which is the negotiation of charges, which we are doing. In 2014 also, by the end of the year, we want to have put in place the advanced shipment information mechanism, which would allow us to get advanced information of shipments for the benefit of importers and exporters. So these are some of the key things which we want to accomplish by the end.
Do you have the resources to execute these various things you have on your plate?
Yes, divide our work into 2. There are a number of things which we do for the benefit of importers and exporters, which comes from internally generated funds. We also, what we're doing is for our big projects like the Shippers House, Accra, Takoradi Logistics Platform, other logistic platforms we want to create, warehousing, etc. We want to partner the private sector under a PPP arrangement where we bring in some value, and then the private sector also teams up with us. Sometimes working together, we can leverage and get a loan, you know, from the bank to be able to do these facilities. Because you see, we cannot only have the legal administrative structures right. We also have to get the infrastructure right. So when the port is developed, expanded, etc., and you have only 3 routes coming out of the port, like it was way back in the early 80s, you know, then you haven't done much. You need to expand those facilities as well. You need to create platforms where you can store goods that are coming, you know, from the port very quickly. You need to look at an inland terminal where you can carry goods very quickly, like goods going to Kumasi and beyond, to Buankra.
What happened with that project, the Buankra project?
Yes, we're still on the Buankra project. We are repackaging the project. You know, the World Bank has now come on board. You know, all along, it's been very difficult for us to get investors to invest in the project. Because remember that some projects may be socially viable, they may be economically viable, but financially, the viability is such that you need to inject a lot of capital. Fortunately, the World Bank has come in now. There is a transaction advisor being appointed. The World Bank is taking care of that. They've given the no objection. And once the transaction advisor is in place, they will look at the railway and the inland port together as a fused project. And consequently, with that, we are expecting that we should get an investor to partner with the public sector to get Buankra also off the ground.
You seem to have a lot, and there's a lot of questions on my mind, but we can't take all your time. So I want to know, before you leave the Shippers Authority as the chief officer, not executive, but the chief officer of the place, what would you want to see? What can anybody say that you'd have left behind when you finally take your bow from this place?
There are a number of things that I'm sure people will want to leave behind. There are always the monuments that you leave behind. But for me, an inspired staff. That for me is critical. Building the organization DNA. A DNA in the organization that makes people committed. That culture, for me, is prime to everything. Everything apart. We've put up all the houses. We've done all the logistics. That for me is not what I consider as critical. I consider the culture of the organization. uninspired people. So they can always look up to a vision and say, we want to get there.
Doctor, it's been very good talking to you. I know you are a very busy person, but I want to thank you very much for making time to be on our set this morning. I thank you very much. Very much. And we pray that you're able to achieve that before you finally take your bow. Thank you very much. Viewers, will be coming to you from the office of the Chief Executive Officer of the Ghana Shippers Authority. We've discussed several issues, but one thing I take as we go along today is that he wants to leave behind an inspired people. It's not about the buildings. It's not about, all the cars and all that. But if you can leave the right kind of people, the right caliber, with the right attitude, there is nothing they cannot achieve. Thank you for staying with us this morning. We'll continue with our programs. I've been your host, Benjamin Afre. Thank you.